Hi folks, I'm Damon Wood, and this is going to be a guitar lesson for beginners that's also going to involve a little bit about how to play the blues. So let's get started. Alright, so this is a lesson for beginners. So first I'm going to show a little exercise that I give all the beginner students that I have. It's just finding the first fret of the biggest string, the E string, and then putting your next finger on the next fret, just going 1, 2, 3, 4. And whenever you play a note, you want to get it near the fret, not too far back, right near that fret, but not on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and just do that with each string. And you keep going, and when you get to the end, this last little 4, go ahead and go backwards with that one. And try to keep your fingers in the good spot on each new fret. So that's a good little exercise to get you started. That's called a chromatic exercise. So now let's talk about another easy thing we can do. This is a little bit even easier than that, and is also the blues scale, the minor pentatonic scale. So this is a slightly simpler version of the technical blues scale, but this is a blues scale for sure. So what we can do here is we can start on the open string and go to the 3. We'll use our third finger for that. So we have open and 3, and then next string we have open and 2. We'll use the second finger for the 2. Next string the same. Next string the same. Next string open 3 and open 3. Pretty simple, right? That's the blues scale. And it started on an E note, so that was the E minor pentatonic scale. Now if we wanted to change keys with that scale, what we would do is we would go to a new note. Let's say this note here. We would do that same type of pattern. So you see how the string we started with had a 3 note difference, 3 fret difference? Well, this one needs to also. That's why we have 3 to 6. And then these others would be 3, 5. And then the last 2 would be 3, 6 again. Another thing when you're practicing these scales, since there are only 2 notes per string, just go down, up, and that's going to help you get your alternate picking going. And etc. So you could do the same thing. Since this one has 4 in it, you could go down, up, and you could practice your alternate picking that way. Okay, so that's a little bit about a warm-up thing, and your basic scale and how to move it around to different keys. Now, I'm not going to go into the names of the strings and how to find notes. That would be like for a different lesson. But we're going to kind of talk about the blues a little more. Let's start out, we're going to talk about chords and different things we can do in blues with chords. So let's go over our 8 basic open chords. So we have E, and that's got that 2, 2, 1. And then we've got E minor. Take that 1 out. We've got G. 3 and 2 on the top, the little 3 on the bottom. G can also have 2 3s on the bottom down there. And then we have C. And a big one on C is you don't want to play that big string. You want to either pick away from it, and that's 3, 2, open, 1, and open, starting on the 5th string. You want to pick away from that big E, or you want to have your finger up here kind of touch it so it's muted, because you don't want to hear that. It makes it real muddy sounding. Okay, so that was E major, E minor, G, C. Now we're going to get into the A's. This is A major, open on the 5th string, 2, 2, 2, open. A major, A minor, puts a 1 in it on the 2nd string. And let's go to the D's. So this is D major, open 2, 3, 2, and D minor. You got to flip that around, open 2, 3, 1. Okay, so those last ones we did were A major, A minor, D major, D minor. So let's look at all those again, because we're going to use those to make blues chords here in a second. So E, E minor, let's go to G, and then C, and then we're going to go to the A's, A major, A minor, and D's, D major, D minor. So the very first one, E, if we take this finger out right here on this 4th string, we keep the open 2, open 1 going. Now we have an E7. Nice bluesy chord to get started with. Now the next one could go along with that E7. We can look at this A right here. If we take that middle 2 out of those, we end up with open 2, open 2, open. goes great with the E7. Now what I'm doing on that strum is I'm just going down, down, up, down, up, down, 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 up, down, up, down. But it's got a little what they call swing to it. I'm not going. That would be straight. Swing is like, and that's because you kind of feel those as a triplet. And a triplet in a swing thing is like, a triplet would be like 1 and 2 and 3 and like that. But in a swing thing, it's like the 1 and the middle one is taken out. So you end up with a 1, 2, 3. So that's kind of what we're doing here. 2, 3, 4. Now we have a chord here that we haven't discussed yet. This is a B7. The B major chord or B minor chord, those are a little bit more difficult. Those are bar chords, so we're not going to get into that in this lesson. But when we get to this progression in E that uses this A also, the third chord of that would be this B7. So this is a little tricky. This is going to be a 2 on the 5th string, and then a 1, and then a 2, and then open, and then 2 on the bottom. And you try not to play the big string, just like with a C chord. So we have the 3 chords that we need to play the blues. And we have our scale that you could take a solo and make your own little melodies and improvise with this very simple scale. So let's look at how an 8-bar blues would go. This is going to go E7 to A7, and it's going to do that twice. And then it's going to start what they call the turnaround. That's when we go to this third chord, which is called the 5 chord, actually. And that's because E is the first note of that scale of that key. And if you went to the 4th note of that, it's the A. That's why the A is called a 4. So we have a 1 and a 4, and then the B would be the 5th note of that scale. So that's why this is called the 5 chord, also known as the turnaround chord. So in an 8-bar blues, we're going to go 1, 4, 1, 4, and then 5, 4, 1, and 5. So let's try that. 2, 3, 4. Down to A. And back. Back to A. And then B7. Takes a little longer to get that one. And then A. Back to the E. And then we'll have the B. Okay, so that's a good thing to practice, playing along with that 8-bar blues on the chords. But another thing that's even easier is just to try to play the notes of this scale as I'm playing those chords. And as long as you just don't go all the way down or all the way up, you do something and switch directions, then you're improvising and you're making your own solo. And you can hold notes as long as you want. What you kind of do is you hear a note and how it sounds with the chords I'm playing. And if you like how that sounds, then you could hold that note out or do more things with that note involved. But if that note doesn't sound great, then pop off to another note in a different direction, up or down, and you're probably going to sound a lot better right away. And as the chords change, the note you're playing, it's going to change like how it's relative to the sound. So you might be on a good note right now, but I might switch to a new chord and that note doesn't sound that great anymore. But all these notes sound pretty great over all these chords at all times. That's why this is the easiest scale to start playing solos with and start improvising with. Okay, so you know your scale. Let's have you guys play. I'm going to give you the chords and I'm going to have you guys play, improvise your solo and see how you do. Okay? 2, 3, and. And as long as you don't go straight up and down, you're doing it. You're playing the blues. it up a little bit. This one's a bit more common. This is a 12-bar blues. It's a little bit easier to solo with because it stays longer on some of the chords. Now keep going, and I'm going to add a couple little tricks here and there. See if you can end on an E. Try to find an E note. And I'll give you a little hint. The bottom string, that's the E string. So whenever you play that string, that is like your home bass note that matches the chord if you're on that chord at the time. You got another one on the big one, of course, and then the second fret of the fourth string, the D string, that's an E note as well. So it's good to know where those are. And then when I go to that A chord, if you start thinking about, that's an A. So if you do a little riff that uses that note at that time I'm playing the A, even though it's not in that chord, it is the A right there on the third string, second fret. Now you also have other things like sliding up here. That's a good place to find your B. You could also find it on the second string open. But this is a cool blues riff to know about. And you could also get up into this 5 here and the 3-5 up to the 7. That gives you a little bit more notes to work with. All right, this is the second episode of Blues for Beginners. We talked about our 7 chords, E7, A7, and B7 last time. Now we're going to talk about these next 7 chords. We have G7. And when you hear G7, that means G dominant 7, which means a bluesy type chord. It mixes elements of major and minor together to get this twang. So what we have here is the 3 and 2 from a G like we normally have, but we have a 1 on the bottom string with those opens. So that's G7. Now if we move down here to a C, we put this pinky here on the 3rd fret of the 3rd string. We get a C7. And then our next one is going to be D7. So it's like a D, but it's kind of inverted. Open 2, 1, 2 is D7. So our new ones are G7, C7, and D7. Now with those 3 chords, we could play blues in the key of G. Last time we talked about 8-bar blues and 12-bar blues and how to kind of negotiate those changes. So we're going to do that same thing. We're going to do an 8-bar blues in G now. So I'm going to go G. And then I'm going to go down to that C7, which can take a little getting used to, that one. And G7 again. Down to C7. And then D7. Turnaround chord. Back to C7. G7. And D7. And we can end on the G7. So that would be our 8-bar blues. G is the 1 chord, C is the 4 chord, and in an 8-bar blues you commonly go from the 1 to the 4 and the 1 to the 4 again. And then we're going to go to our D7, which is the 5 chord, the turnaround chord. And then we go back to the 4, and then we have 1, and we end with the 5. So 1, 4, 1, 4, 5, 4, 1, 5. That's what we're doing. So let's try to play along with that. 2, 3, 4. D7, C7, G7, D7. Okay, now something that you can do in this key is play that easy blues scale we talked about, the minor pentatonic. This would be the G minor pentatonic. So we got 3 and 6 on the big string, 3 and 5. And that goes 3 times in a row, and then we have 3, 6 twice. So you can play that scale. Do anything you want with it besides just going straight up and down. And you're improvising and you're playing the blues and making up your own solos. So how about this? I'm gonna play these chords. How about you try to do a solo with this scale here? And think about maybe using some vibrato when you'll want to hold a note. You could try to do a little bends. This is a really good string to try a little bend on. This is really the best one to start with. And when you do a bend, you want to put these other fingers behind it to help you get up there higher, right? Okay, so let's give it a shot. You could either play the chords with me or you could try to take a solo. Let's try it. 2, 3, 4. All right, how'd you do? Let me know in the comments how this is coming along for you, and if you need any other kind of tips or if you have any questions and things like that. Okay, so once again, that blues scale was this. Now here's a trick if you want to add a note in that. Makes it more bluesy. That gives you the official blues scale. The blues scale with what's called the flat fifth. It also appears right here on the 6th fret of the 3rd string. So that's a cool note to add. You get cool riffs like that. So last lesson we had the E7. So let's see in the key of E minor pentatonic where that flat fifth belongs. There it goes right there. It's that B flat note. 1st fret of the 5th string. And then it's going to come back right here. 3rd fret of the 3rd string. Okay, and then G. Okay, now if we wanted to switch to another key, like say the key of A. Here's the A right here. We just do that scale up here. If we wanted C, well, here goes a C. And we could play our blues in the key of C very, very easily. Okay, and if you wanted to add the flat 5th note, see how these patterns are always just the same? It's just where you start them on, put you in a different key. All right, now let's look at a different key. So if we had A to start, we would go down to D. Back to A. D, and then E7, back to D7, and then A7, back to the E7. And you could play your blues up here on the 5th fret. Let's try that. 2, 3, and. twice. Then we got our turnaround, got our E to the D, back to the A, and then our turnaround again on the E. All right, now I want to tell you about a 12 bar. That was an 8 bar blues. So a 12 bar goes, in its most basic form. It can be a lot of things. So it's going to go to the A to the D, but it's going to stay on the A there. And then it's going to go to the D, but it's going to stay there too. 2, 3, and then back to A twice. 2, 3, 4, 1. And then we're going to start our same turnaround. 5, E, down to the 4, which is the D, and then A, back to the E. And this one is easier to solo over because you have more time on each chord. Like right here, you can get into the sounds of that chord for a bit longer before you have to switch chords. Because each time a chord switches, the notes you're playing, they sound different. There goes our turnaround. All right, this is lesson 3 of beginner blues. So let's talk about a honky tonk rhythm. Right, so you've heard that kind of a thing. What we have here is an A power chord. We have the open A. We have that 2 on the 4th string underneath it. And we're going to go to this 4th fret of the D string there, same string as the 2. And then we bring that pinky in there. So if we wanted to start this, that's kind of a swing way to do it. The straight way would be. And the easier way, just kind of back and forth. But if we swing it, we get that 2, 2, 4, 4, 2, 2, 4. And that's where you can add that in. Now we go down a string, we get the D. And then we go to the big E, down to the D. And sometimes you don't have time to bring that pinky in. So there's lots of ways it could go. Here's an example, Call Me the Breeze, Leonard Skinner, written by J.J. Cale. So see, I got my thumb up there, muting that E string so I don't hear that when I play these. And then I've got the bottom of this finger muting down kind of the rest of the strings all the time. So even if I strum a little bit far away from those 2 strings, you're not going to hear any extra noise you don't need here. So that's our basic rhythm. Let's try that. Nice and slow. 2, 3, 4. Go down one. Now this one can be tricky because you don't want to mute that other 2 because it would really be a 3 to be that D power chord. But it's not so easy to do that. And you don't really want to hear that 3 anyway. You just want to hear these 2. So just kind of make sure you're muting those bottom strings. You'll be good. E, D, A, and Call Me the Breeze just stays on that. So Call Me the Breeze also has a cool riff to start it out before this honky tonk thing comes in, and it's like a So let's look at that. We got A power chord. That can be like open 2 and 2. Now we're hitting those 5s on the 2 middle strings there, the D and the G strings. So, and that was a 3 to open pull off on the 5th string, and then a 3 on the big string, maybe slight bend coming back to the power chord. And then it holds that one the next time and has a little. So that's 3, 4. Good to use those fingers because then you got this one waiting. That's 3, 4 on the A string, 2, 4 and down on the D string. So we got. So it does that like 4 times, and then you get into. Now there's gonna be a new trick this time. Okay, so that was the power chords, 5 and 7, or 5, 7, 7, starting on the A string there. That's a D power chord. So we went 5, 4, 3, 2, D, D flat, C, B, back to the A. So another thing you can do is instead of doing your D down here, you could use the same strings we did the A on and jump it up here to the 5th fret. And it's kind of hard to reach that pinky there. If you can't do that, just go 5, 4, 3, 2, you're back to A. Kind of combine them a little bit there. So I got to the end of that A and I did those little 5s and that little riff to lead me into the E. Okay, what about taking a solo in your A pentatonic scale over this progression I'm doing? Try that. 2, 3, and. Time. Let's do that one more time. So the end of that Call Me the Breeze, A power chord, C sharp on the 4th, D, D sharp to the E power chord. Then you're gonna have 2 chords here. Now this is what we're gonna get into in the next lesson, bar chord 7s. So this is like barring all of the 6 there, 6, 8, 6, and then 7, 6, 6. Then we go down to the A7. So B flat 7, and A7. So once again, that ends with, I'll start with the turnaround. Now we're gonna have that walk up. So 2 strums all the way to the E and then 1 hit on the E. Kind of slide it down, Mr. Breeze. B flat 7, A7. And later on these lessons, we'll get into how to add notes into your blues scale. All right, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. I'm Damon Wood. We'll see you soon.